2018 meeting. I want to welcome everyone and let you know that this is the meeting of the Board of Education. The purpose of the meeting is to conduct the business before the board. We're interested in hearing from you and have set time aside for community comments so that we can work productively and effectively. Public comments, statements, and concerns are welcomed in the community comments portion of the agenda. There is a time limit if you'd like to speak of 3 minutes. And we would ask that if and when you do speak that you recognize that staff and student names cannot be mentioned because of privacy issues. And that if you would like to speak to us regarding a personnel issue, we ask that you make sure that I know that and offer perhaps an executive session to do that, which wouldn't be tonight, obviously. And also, I just want to say that the board is legally obligated to protect student confidentiality and privacy by state and federal law, and that we need to abide by that. So welcome. Nice to have you here. If you haven't signed up, there's a pad in the corner back there for you to sign up. And roll call.
Aida?
I'm here.
Sean?
Here.
Sylvia?
Yes, here.
Steve?
Yes.
Steve?
Here.
All right, we are going into the approval of the minutes of the April 12th, 2018 regular meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any issues with any of these? Okay. Roll call.
Sean?
Yes.
Sylvia?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Aida?
Yes. All right, again, I'd like to acknowledge the president and the audience and move into communications, presentations, and reports. 2.1, communications. I'd like to share that there's a letter from Elizabeth Simon dated April 16, 2018. There's a letter from Shannon Wilson dated April 18, 2018. A letter from Jennifer Clark dated April 21st, 2018. A letter from Olivia Dishman dated April 25th, 2018, and a letter from Catherine Merrill dated April 30th, 2018. Okay, we're moving into community comments. I'd like to recognize any members of the audience who would like to address the board for any reason.
Might be long-winded today. Sorry. My name is Eli Hurwitz. I am the president of the Yellow Springs Education Association. I represent the Teachers Union, and I'm speaking on behalf of the teachers. Thank you, Madam President, for this time. Albert Einstein said it is the supreme art of the teacher to awaken joy and creative expression and knowledge. This is Teacher Appreciation Week. 3 of our district's teachers are resigning this year and moving on to the next chapters of their lives. I would like to publicly thank Elizabeth Simon, Jeff Collins, and Shannon Wilson for practicing the art of teaching with our district students. Their contribution to the memories and learning of our children, the awakening of the joy and the creative expression and knowledge will continue to be felt in this community for many years to come. I want to recognize our district's elementary teachers for leading the students through a tremendous display of their learning and deeper thinking at last night's exhibition. I want to recognize our district's middle and high school teachers for preparing our students for a wonderful display of their learning and deeper thinking at the high school next Wednesday for our exhibition there from 6 to 7:30. And the community is, of course, invited. I want to recognize our AP teachers and the teachers along the way that help students get to AP classes for going above and beyond to help students prepare for their AP tests. I want to recognize our school counselor and French teacher, Dave Smith, for creating an organized and safe testing environment. The number and results of AP tests are some of the metrics used in the U.S. News and World Report's high school rankings. We have once again been ranked as one of the best schools in Ohio. The Yellow Springs Education Association was in support of the levy because we know that learning environments matter. Moving forward, because we always must move forward, the teachers definitely would like you to keep Mills Lawn in your thoughts. We have and always will do the best we can with what we have. Quick funny story, I was eating lunch here in the staff lounge and a teacher turned off the lights to run the microwave. I didn't understand and was told it was done in order to avoid blowing a fuse. I'll leave it to you to decide whether this is a story to support full-time librarians in both buildings that understand the intricacies of the electrical system and know what will and will not blow a fuse, or just a bit of commentary about the need to update the electrical system in a building that relies on an increased electrical load to instruct students. Finally, as a parent of a student about to graduate from the Yellow Springs schools, I would like to thank the school board for the wealth of talent that you have hired over the years. The teachers here have educated both of my daughters, my wife, and as a colleague, they regularly challenge me to learn more. Thank you.
Anybody else want to address the board?
3 minutes.
Go ahead.
My name is Abigail Cobb, and haven't been to a school board meeting probably in 20 years, so I'm happy to be here. I am the spouse of someone who graduated from Yellow Springs High School in 1970. We have 5 children who graduated between 1992 and 2010. It was a 17-year spread in our children. We now have 3 grandchildren in this district. A 4th grandchild moved to Dayton last year with her family for affordability reasons, and she is completing a good year at the Dayton Regional STEM School as a 6th grader. So I'm happy for her, but I would love to have them come back. This levy process was very emotional for me, as it was for many people. I was surprised at the amount of emotion that was raised for me with the various issues. So I'm here mainly to sit in your presence and lick some wounds is how I feel, but I strongly want to encourage the planning and the planning for a new levy to continue, maybe in the fall, to keep working on it, to keep going forward. I think it's really important. I was at the exhibition night last night at Mills Lawn. It was, as always, very fun. We have a 5th grade and a 3rd grade grandchild. But I went into the affordable housing PDL in the 4th grade, and I was very moved by the computer videos of the 4th graders who were open enrollment students who said they've been coming to the school since kindergarten and they would really, really like to work to live here. Some of the students mentioned their parents are nurses, EMTs. I've been a registered nurse throughout my 30-year career, so I could really feel for them. And full disclosure, my family left Yellow Springs 31 years ago to go live in Miami Township. We live in the Vale community, which is a well-known intentional community just south of town, where we found a cheap rental, and over a period of some years we were able to build a house there once I was working full-time as a nurse. But we never returned to live in the village. It's always been too expensive for us. But the school system was marvelous and provided my family and my children stability, inspiration, nurturance throughout all those years. So my heart really goes out to those open enrollment kids, and I felt like if that's a beeper for me to stop talking.
No, that was the end. I think it's coming up.
Right.
Okay, so I would like to hear in the next levy campaign a little bit more about who the open enrollment kids are. Do they bring diversity to the school district? Because I think they do. I think that as a community we can't avoid a deeper conversation about affordable housing. There's a new study from University of California, Berkeley, about how in desirable places such as Yellow Springs, the rents and the housing prices keep going up unless there's some conscious effort to put a limit on those.
Abby, I'm sorry about that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can see what I mean.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, yes.
Good evening, I'm Leslie Shepard, and I have had the real pleasure of substituting this year in the various schools. But I also substitute in Enid and at Tecumseh High School, Shawnee High School, Cedar Cliff. I've been in the elementary, the middle, high school. So I've spent a lot of time in area schools. I really think it's time, especially with this levy pummeling, for this school administration and the village to reconsider what this school really is. Because I can tell you, this is anecdotal evidence. This is not statistical. I'm not pretending this is perfectly quantified or measured. I could tell you, particularly at the high school, the lack of rigor, the lack of discipline, the lack of appropriate behavior is shocking compared with the other schools in which I teach. It is, and I went to school here. I grew up, I went from kindergarten in this building all the way to graduating from the high school. So I know what it used to be like. And I think it's really time for this town and this body here to consider the whole school culture. What are we like? There was a letter in the newspaper today from a woman who was substituted here at Mills Lawn, and she talked about the kindergarten. And it was interesting to me because she said that what a rigid, rule, strong place it is. And I've come home to my husband before and said, I taught kindergarten today, it was great, I love the kids, but I'll tell you what, they are being made into the littlest ratty tattletales. So-and-so ate a goldfish 2 feet away from the prescribed allowed area that was not between 10 and 10:05, and they come and tell you that. And they're just, I don't know what it is. What is the school culture? We have that tight rigidity at one age, and I finally got to saying to them, lighten up, guys. Save it for important things. Come and tell me about dangerous things and hazardous things and important things, but do not come and rat out every little person in the class that looks sideways, I don't know what that culture is about. And then out at the high school, I came from a background of teaching in juvenile detention. I taught murderers, rapists, drug dealers, arsonists, and I was treated better on many occasions by those students than I have been treated at the Yellow Springs High School by those students. And I think you really also need to examine this cell phone computer culture. When you compare it to the other schools, they don't have it. It's not an issue. They're not there. I'm out at the high school. They're looking at NCAA sports games. They're in their headphones. They're listening to music. Okay, but you get the idea. It's time to really take a look at what this school is about, what we think we are. We have this fantasy about what we are, but what are we really? Thank you.
Anybody else? All right.
I would like to speak if I may have a moment.
Sure. At 3.
My name is Matt Raska, and I live here in the village. And right now, Yellow Springs Schools are currently suing a teacher that taught here and settled with the district for a civil rights infringement. And I have a question. Who has the authority to issue a lawsuit?
To issue a lawsuit? To initiate a lawsuit?
This isn't question and answer time, this is public comment time, so if you are interested in questions, you can address them to the appropriate people, but this ain't the place to do that.
And also, we're not allowed to speak about any kind of pending
Obviously.
litigation, so.
Well, I guess I won't ask if anything was done to address the culture that generated the civil rights movement a few years ago. See you later.
Okay, we are moving on to schools in action. Introduction of new staff.
Yes. So on a positive note, we are excited about introducing a new staff member to Yellow Springs Schools. We have not a brand new teacher, 8th grade math teacher, middle school math teacher, 7th and 8th grade, that went through a long, challenging process of interviewing, and then we added a process that we've done really once before. We call it the Bonanza, and she interviewed with other candidates, and it was really an interactive process where they were all together doing lots of different activities, including interviewing, and I thought it was a really powerful opportunity. And she also taught a class to students, and we were able to see her skills with kids, and it was a really nice and powerful experience. And through that whole process, Jack and I were involved with several teachers as well, and it was a really great opportunity. And so I want to say that we're really happy to be hiring Alicia Horvath. She got incredible reviews and feedback from her schools, and we're just excited that she's here and she's choosing Yellow Springs. Jack, do you want to add anything?
No, I mean, I would echo the same thing. We're very excited to have her, and we look forward to what she can continue to contribute to our middle school team. I think she'll be a great fit.
Alicia, do you have anything you'd like to say? I mean, that's sort of a, I almost forgot about that part, yeah.
I'm Alicia Horvath. I'm just super excited for this opportunity. I've been in education for lots of years. Teaching 7th and 8th grade math has been my forte. I've done administration for the past couple of years, but just really wanted to get back in the classroom. And I'm super excited about all the project-based learning and stuff. That's something that I haven't had the opportunity to do a lot of in charter schools because of the restraints they put on us. So I'm just really, really excited to be a part of the team. So thank you for having me.
Welcome.
It's a great team.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. All right, moving into administrative reports.
Do you want to dismiss?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If you leave, you don't have to stay for us.
Oh,
That was pretty much
or
the
if you
highlight of
really
the
want to
evening.
say.
The rest of this gets pretty dull pretty quick.
All right. Matt, do you want
You wanna go?
Sure, I'll start. Good evening. So, there's a lot of events that are coming up in May. May is our super, super busy time, and I hope that in any of the events that you guys are able to attend, that you join up. But we had a very significant day yesterday. We had a bike to school day where 70% of our kids either rode or rode a bike or walked to school, which was awesome. We had a community event in the morning. We had our late start, which was time for teachers to prepare for exhibition. And then the kids came in and prepared for exhibition. We had about 20 visitors or so, 15 to 20 visitors that day, teachers from other schools. So we had a day of preparing and then practicing our exhibitions. And then we rolled right into exhibition night, which was really great. We had amazing feedback. Some of the teachers and parents were saying it's the best one ever. We felt like it was an awesome showing. So we just had a really great day yesterday. Everybody came in feeling tired and kind of dragging, but that excitement of a really great job well done. So I'm really excited about that. In particular, the outdoor education area that's been kind of creeping along, and we've been trying to develop it. There's some new paintings out there that first graders made. They've engaged in a project that was about insect study. So they've captured some images of insects on these paintings that are now attached to the fencing out there. And we've ordered a whiteboard for that outdoor space. So this is kind of a long process, but kids are actually going out there and learning, and we're starting to get more outdoor education right here on campus, which is awesome. So I was really proud of that, and just tons and tons of great project work last night on display. So that was exciting. And then something else, our teachers have been being kind of pampered this week by PTO as well as in-house here. They had a lunch today that was supported by the board, by Mario, and they've had the PTO giving them treats during lunches and things like that. So that's been great for them, but really our focus was just helping our students to understand how to say thank you, how to show appreciation for the things that teachers do for them every day. So I just want to say how much I appreciate the teachers here at Mills Lawn as well as across the district, and really appreciate all the hard work that they bring every day. So, and if you guys have any questions for me about my answer.
Here's a quick question.
Sure.
Did you eat any of the bugs last night?
I had an array of, I sampled all the different bugs.
Me too. I've never eaten so many bugs in
They were
one moment
delicious.
in my entire life.
Cheddar cheese and salsa, and like spicy.
They
and
were
just
really,
lots of different
really
flavors.
good. I mean, I'm trying to convince the kids to try that at home now. See, but
It was second grade. That was part of the
fascinating to
Heidi
watch
Hoover.
people too, how they reacted to, like, some people were just like, no way, and then others were brave, and then you had to.
The kids were totally brave. They didn't miss a beat. They were, yeah. But that was a part of Heidi Hoover, second grade teacher. She was doing also an insect study, but it was a little bit of a different take, where it was trying to survey the school to see what kinds of insects live with us, and also really a focus on like how insects are beneficial and how do we, instead of killing them, help them? Like, if we don't want them inside, how can we get them outside, but not just by killing them, because there's tons of benefits that they bring to our world, including being a food source. So that was one take on the beneficial
So we kill
aspect.
Nourishment.
Maybe we could trap them and then cook them for lunch. Any other questions?
Well, yeah, I don't get the cheddar cheese or cheddar cheese and bugs, is that?
They baked them cricket parts into a chick. That was one thing, and then there was actual mealworms that were salted.
That are just kind of crunchy, like
Crunchy.
Wow.
And then there was like a little bit more of a raw dish, like we really were interested.
that wasn't one of, that was just a bug that was there. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I asked the kids, I was like, are these the bugs that you found in the school that we're eating? And they were like, no, those are part of the study.
They were all from Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
Stink bug tartare.
Oh, stink bugs, yes. All right, well, interesting. Okay, moving on to Jack, huh?
Yeah, so middle school, high school has had a lot going on. Late April seemed like a real busy time for us. So we had the Blue Knights percussion ensemble. They were in from Denver for the international competition that was held at UD, and they used our facilities to rehearse during the day, and then they came in and did a performance for our students towards the end of the school day, and they were incredible. So it was super powerful, I think, for our kids to see what the next level can be, and their percussion ensemble is 15 to 22-year-olds. So once you hit 23, you've aged out. So to see what's really within their grasping distance for our kids. And then the Drums Alive, those are all exercise balls that Kate Lohmeyer was able to purchase with a grant through the Community Foundation. So I want to thank the Community Foundation for our kids to kind of build on that momentum. And then they were making their own music, and the kids were coming out of PE just dripping with sweat from drumming on those. So it was very cool to see like the momentum of one carry over to the next. We're actually working with the Blue Knights potentially to come back with their drum corps this summer with like 150 members and stay, use our facilities again to rehearse, but then do a performance for our entire community, which I think would be a really, really cool opportunity for us. And then the next thing, a couple days later, we had the student walkout. So that was something that we worked really hard to kind of stay out of our students' way on. We had amazing student leadership. And I was able to go down and just see how unifying the walkout was, kind of their voice and their advocacy, and the way it was done in such a warm and inviting way. Every speaker was cheered for and invited. To see kids as young as elementary students going over, and then to see adults from the community partaking. Just really a powerful event, and to see the learning that took place outside of our building, how rich that was very powerful. And then on Saturday of that same week, we had our students, our Power of the Pen team. So the Power of the Pen competition was dropped this year because the person who had always organized it and with the founder, I think, passed away, and they decided to no longer have the competition. So our students got in on the Penn Ohio competition, which is actually, it's a middle school and high school, and Power of the Pen was always only middle school. In our very first year there, we went into the regional tournament and we won. Our 7th grade won first, our 8th grade was third, and our middle school was first overall against 17 other schools. And we have, I think, 8 students going to the state competition in about a week and a half for their writing. So really neat to see our students flourishing in a different type of elective, and the commitment that these kids have, staying 2 days a week after school for a couple hours all school year. Just really powerful to see their creativity and to see them light up when they experience that success. So very cool. And then the last thing I had done there was the French Cafe. So as always, the French Cafe was a delightful experience. Dave Smith and the French students did an amazing job with their entertainment and their food, and it was kind of interesting because that took place on a Saturday and Wednesday. Dave tuned that project at our Late Start Wednesday and talked about how he wants to get the focus back on Rwanda. So the French Cafe, the focus has always been to raise money to scholarship students to the Biamana School of Science or Science School in Rwanda, and they actually raised enough money to scholarship 3 high school students for their entire high school careers, which is pretty incredible. So, and then the last thing is just, again, echoing Matt with the teacher appreciation. We have a ton of adults in our building working very hard. They've been very committed to our students and our success this year in some trying times, and they've just done an amazing job, and I appreciate everything that they're doing.
Well, I just want to tag on to that too, and I know we're going to talk about student handbook, but I participated in student review board handbook go over, and I just want to say that it's always a great time for me because I have a lot of exposure to the kids, and I found them to be very thoughtful and eloquent and careful about, words they chose because there were some touchy areas, and their sensitivity I felt was really obvious and evident. So anyway, I just want to appreciate the kids. So.
I want to reiterate the letter that Mario sent out about the walkout. It was not a school-sanctioned event.
Right.
It was not an excused absence. And so I will speak now very personally and say that I'm just really proud of the students who understood that there might be consequences of suspension, a detention, Wednesday school, something like that. Yeah. But decided that this was important enough that they were going to walk out, and I'm just immensely proud of all of them and the leadership group of 8th graders.
Yeah, primarily 8th graders, a couple high school kids.
Which I think is going to mean a lot of grief for us for the next 4 years. They're at it like this in 8th grade, but it's really, I'm personally speaking, just really proud of them.
Well, they started it in the 6th grade, if I recall, with the Women's March.
Yeah, that's for your kids, but I miss my daughter.
Sylvia?
Well, so I didn't see the more formal gathering with the speeches, but Craig and I were in the Emporium with our laptops when kind of later on, a swarm of the kids who had been in the walkout, descended upon the Emporium and, were having beverages and snacks and everything. And really very quickly, as soon as they got what they wanted to eat, because I was thinking, okay, it's over, and here's the rest of the day. They all started calling, they had lists of phone numbers, and they all started calling their representatives. It was, little kids. It was amazing, and they were very, they weren't done. They were just done with that part, and then they had walked further into town to get something to eat and drink, and now they were getting down to business. It was really very moving.
All right, thank you. All right, student services.
All right, there's a lot of things going on at the end of the year, but I just wanted to share a few highlights. And the first is I got to visit the classroom when Jen Clark, who is one of our intervention specialists, was working on Hawaii Space PBL. And I was really impressed, so I thought I would share a little bit of what went into that. I'm sure you all saw some of that yesterday at exhibition night. But the picture over here was Jen actually sitting with the 2nd and 3rd graders that are in her resource room, and they were doing a FaceTime interview with what the kids call rocket scientist Jason, which I got a kick out of. Is actually a former NASA employee and Jennifer Clark's husband, who's an aerospace engineer. So that was the local expert. But the kids had, working on some skills for reading, along with science, reading and writing, they had crafted questions to interview this previous NASA worker who had worked on the shuttle launch, the satellite launch, that had happened on April 18th. So in the class, they had watched the satellite launch. That was the weekend before. This was right after. They watched the satellite launch, and they had crafted these questions. And via FaceTime, you can kind of see Jen's phone on the bottom picture. They went around and asked, read their questions. And that was actually a picture. He had a model, and he actually held up a model, and that was the model of, because they were asking, how does it fly? Why did they put weight? They knew about, they had read a story or an article. They'd heard about where someone actually launched a car in space because they had to put weight in the nose of the shuttle, and he explained that. And so it was really interesting to watch watch this aerospace engineer answer students from the resource room and their questions and bring it down to their level. And he did a really nice job. He was very patient, and I think all of us actually learned quite a bit. So they were putting together, they were researching space and of course rockets, and they wanted to know how space programs and space research benefit us here on Earth. And they ended up doing some of that research, and they actually, another local expert that was another husband of somebody, a student teacher, who is a IT guy, he's a programmer. He wrote some simple code so that students got experience using code to build a website. And at that link, you can see where the research is. If you wanted to explore that, it actually has pictures of the areas. You can click on kitchen and it'll show pictures. You can click on the picture and it'll say what we got from NASA, from their research that benefits us here on Earth. And I thought that was just an amazing amount of learning and a really creative way to engage the kids. And I don't think they're going to forget most of the stuff they had learned doing that project. I was really impressed. So if you get a chance, check out their website if you haven't already. Then the next thing I wanted to share with you is that a lot of times, being a smaller school district or not having a huge population of English language learners, some of the grants that would be out there that might benefit us would be hard for us to get. We ended up being on a list for Greene County. Actually, Greene County ESC had a grant and listed several school districts, and our allocation portion of that would have been really small, so we could have maybe sat in on some of the trainings, had some of our teachers go to trainings. When we inquired about that, Betsy Chad, who is the curriculum director at Sugar Creek Bellbrook School District, offered to do some training. She's sending her ESL person out to us and will provide training for our teachers. We could coordinate that with her, and that was really above and beyond what our allocation was, so I really wanted to thank her for being so wonderful and wanting to share that with us. So we'll coordinate a time with her, and that'll be some extra training for our teachers for free, of course. The last thing is I wanted to share that Jody Chick's students, it's 8th grade and high school students this year, went to the Greene County Board of Developmental Disabilities Annual Career Summit. It was on Tuesday, and it was held at Wright State University. And you see there a picture of some of the kids dressed up, looking professional. They went and they're... They participated in presentation activities and competitions. It's all based on skills they would need to be successful in work or in life after high school. Anything from being able to have a good resume to being able to communicate and answer questions. They had several different activities, and I was going to share some of the results, but I haven't gotten them yet. I think we did really well last year. I know you probably know some of the results.
Well, I went to the awards,
yeah,
because I was interested. So I know that last year there were 4 schools that participated, and it went up to 6 this year, and that's nice, including the Greene County Career Center. The Career Center won the overall competition.
Okay.
Yellow Springs came in 3rd out of 6. And I know that Harper Measure and Mark Bricker and Chris, whose last name I can't remember, all 3 got individual medals in different categories. So it was a nice showing overall. Yeah.
It's really fun to see the students dressed up, because that morning I didn't even realize that they were going. And I see these students walking in dressed up, shirt and tie and suits, and it was really neat to see how proud they were to be so dressed up and cleaned up. It was really fun.
They work on these skills regularly, so it's really nice for them to get that recognition at that event each year to reinforce all the hard work that they do.
Well, the career presentation was later the same night, and I got back around to that from work, and Harper was still in the tie and the jacket and everything. He had been home. He could have changed clothes, but he didn't.
That's pretty impressive. I think they can tell that people are impressed.
I think he was enjoying the, yeah.
All right, thank you. All right. We are moving into the financial report.
Okay, just to briefly go over the month of April. April 30th, we received our first quarter income tax collection for 2018. That made our final payment for the fiscal year. And I was really surprised. It was a moderately high payment that we got. And for the fiscal year, it was 13% higher than my projection of 3% and 16% higher than last year. So last year we decreased. The year before that we had a modest increase, and the year before that we decreased. So it's really hard to project income taxes when it's going up and down like that. So, but of course I was tickled pink to have that much of an increase. Just to talk a little bit about the athletic fund, if you notice on the reports, it's pretty much running the whole all year. We seem to be having just an off year with not receiving a lot of revenue, and then just having some bigger expenses. We've got some big ticket expenses when it comes to like our uniform cycle, and these are all typical expenses that you just have to deal with. But our uniform cycle, I talked to our athletic director about using some new volleyball nets and equipment because ours is really old and not good. So we did that. We have to rent the pool at the wellness center. We have to rent the tennis courts, and we have to rent a bowling alley to be able to have these kind of sports. So those things cost a lot of money. It was just a down year for revenues. I'm going to be meeting with our athletic director soon and kind of talk about where we're at for the year and what we're going to do in the future. So my fear is that, right now we're $16,000 in the hole, and we will hardly get any revenue through the end of the year. So we don't have a lot of purchase orders outstanding because it's the end of the year and all of our ordering is done. But the way we pay our officials is they are written a check on the spot. So we will have to take all those checks from the spring and reimburse our athletic account with that. And that can be anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000. So I'm worried that we could be at around $20,000 with the athletic fund this year. So at the end of the fiscal year, I'll ask you to transfer that money into there. Many years ago when we had football, you were transferring $8,000 into it twice a year. So I don't think it's totally atypical. We've been trying to, our best to break even and do with what we have, but we're still just consistently losing money. So I will report on that at the end of the year. Donna first and I worked very hard on our food service request for proposals, and those were due this past Monday. We received proposals from Sodexo, our current provider, and from the nutrition group, which was the only other group to bid last time. The last time, we have to do this every 5 years, and the last time we bid, the Green County Career Center changed from Sodexo to the nutrition group. We also had talked to ABI Food Systems. That's the one that provides fresh and local food to what college?
Granville and Kenyon.
Kenyon College and Greenville schools. And they worked really hard to try to come within the means that we had in the RFP for what we want. They are the ones they have a chef on site every day, and all of their food is fresh and local prepared. So there's just hardly anything frozen or prepackaged. And what they found is that the first year they were just going to lose too much money. And when we met with them, we all knew that they were going to lose money the first year, but they didn't know it was going to be that much money. So they've been talking with Donna. I don't know if Donna would like to reiterate that conversation because I wasn't in it, but we're trying to work a way to see maybe if it's something we could look at in the near future and not have to wait 5 years.
Well, and thinking about it, you what you have now, you can put an RFP unless you know something else that you want to ask for, or something else. And not being the food service company, you may not think of some things. So I think there's maybe some ways to get that loss down where it would make sense for them to be able to bid on it. I don't know if we can do that, but it's not that we have to wait 5 years. It's a contract that you renew up to 5 years, so you can put out an RFP next year, or when we felt that we had enough to ask for that might work with them or another company that would provide the things we want. but it was just too short of a time frame to go through that process and see if we could whittle down the losses or make sure that it was clear what we wanted. So it's not, I think we were hoping that that would work out for this year, but I'm okay that we spend more time to figure out, maybe refine what we want and get the losses down so that it's doable.
And we will be putting a committee together to review the proposals in detail. And then for the June board meeting, we'll bring either Sodexo or Nutrition Group to you for approval for the next 1 to 5 years. I'm sorry?
Should we ask you questions about these items, or do you want us to wait to the end of your report?
I'm done.
I just have a question about, we'll start with the food part. Like, are there parameters in the request for proposals that kind of, I guess, narrow it down to only certain companies can apply and do not encourage maybe organizations that might not think about applying, maybe like Antioch College or McGill's Tacos or Current Cuisine? Like, are there some real strict parameters that don't even give those entities the opportunity to apply? That'll be one
I
question.
think that,
They can apply. The problem is the rules and the bureaucracy around food is tremendous. And the required things around K-12 that you have to do to meet the needs, school food specifically, is just a beast.
There's like,
So they can apply, but they would never, they would not do that. I mean, you almost have to be a major company to be able to have the resources to be able to meet those needs.
or at
You have
least
to
know
have
the
some skills.
language.
Right.
I mean, I would think that someone that didn't do that type of work would look at that proposal or that request for a proposal and maybe not understand some of the language and feel intimidated to apply if it was something like a smaller local restaurant or something of that sort that wanted to work with us. But I think that, like, the first requirement, you have to have a rating scale, and the first requirement is cost. That's just required by ODE, and then you weight the other things that you want and put in language. And so there's the area where you can really define a little bit more. But again, we are not a food service company, so sometimes knowing what we're looking for and the language they use is a learning process. And I think we could learn a little bit more to refine what we're asking for to make that a little more clear. But the first one, the biggest, highest weighted, has to be cost. So that's an issue if we're going to lose a lot of money. But there might be things that we're asking for that we just have always done that we might ask for differently in order to change the costs or how that looks.
Can I follow up on that, or are you going to stay on the same subject?
Yeah, well, follow up on that, and then I want to come back to just one more thing.
Okay.
Around it.
Is there another district in the region that we feel has maybe solved this problem better, differently, that we could, I don't know, look at?
I know another district in the area that uses AVI, and I would be curious to see what, if they had a loss in their first year, but it might be that they were spending a lot more than we were. So it could be, and they might have higher participation. Our participation isn't real high.
Right.
So that's an issue as well.
But that comes out of the circular.
Yep,
Sometimes
that's
you
right.
realize
Also, they may have been
participation's not high if you
paying
don't think
their,
the food is good.
Sodexo might be paying their workers at a higher rate, and maybe the company they were using previous to going with AVI wasn't, or the staffing might be different. So there's a lot of variables there. I think that would be one thing we'd research is, what did they do, and did they have as big of a loss? The first year was, did they have to trim out something in order to reduce that loss to make it more viable? So I think that's some of the things that we wouldn't have had time to do in a couple-week turnaround.
Yeah, sure.
And, realizing that.
So then, are there school districts that just take it in-house, let's get our
Yes.
chef, and maybe in the end it costs more, I don't know, but, and I can't remember if we've ever, did we have that here?
We used to. Lunch ladies, nice women who lived in the town came in and cooked, it was great. But again, as Mario points out, you have all these parameters now. Calories, how much is a starch, how much is a protein, how much is of this, how much is of that,
So taking internally, puts the liability and the burden on us internally. than working with an outside vendor. But I don't know if that's something.
Larger school districts too. I know for both Fairborn and Beaver Creeks.
So
I know
that's not
their
a
supervisor
service,
of
yeah.
nutrition. I've spoken to both of them, and they run their program.
The problem is buying power.
It really
Right.
Is another, and that's huge.
Then there's
And benefits,
Mhm.
salary benefits.
Yeah, when you have a larger group to work with, that's a little more doable than.
That's nice.
And I think it's wonderful to want to offer the best and the most nutritious, but for being in school cafeterias, that's the stuff that usually goes in the trash. The carrots, all the stuff like that,
There's
that's
a lot of
generally
science behind how
a
to get
lot
that
of stuff that's
versus
thrown out, that the kids just don't, they just don't eat it.
Salary
My kids
benefits
here, I've had kids ask me, like,
Some are
about
wonderful,
kale
some are
salad, if it's
some are
vegan. I mean,
wonderful
our
eaters.
kids, I think,
Some are
would
wonderful
definitely
eaters,
eat
but
it.
you can kind of see the trend if you're on lunch duty, you can kind of see, well, you know, what everybody dumps.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was gonna, so is it possible to partner with other districts? Or does that just create yet another layer of bureaucratic confusion? Like, would Beaver Creek be willing to franchise? That's totally hypothetical, I'm just sort of,
I would be
tossing
willing
that
to
out.
investigate a lot of things, but I'd have to see how interested we are in doing that.
Yeah, right, but I mean, is it another way maybe to skin this particular cat?
Yeah, the question is Beaver Creek producing the kind of food that we want to buy?
Yeah, no, exactly, and again,
Yeah.
totally
Assuming
hypothetical.
that happens.
Right.
This happens, I mean, I've been on the board now for many, many years, and I cycle through
I know.
this conversation, and it's really complicated, and it's,
Just
it's
have
a lot
one.
of money. Yeah, sure.
Do these vendors serve insects?
Not on purpose.
Is that
You can put that in their
Give me
request.
parameters
Local
of
insights.
what the company we're looking for?
I mean, of the many things we've had to deal with in our strategic plan that have been so complicated, this turns out that food service has been the most complicated issue of all of them.
But I think if you
difficult
keep
to
putting your
tackle.
energy into it, you'll get there. I mean, I do believe that. I'd rather take the time and find something that works.
Mhm.
That's,
Very cool.
Thank you.
affordable.
Yeah.
Better do than me.
Oh, and the other thing I was
And
thinking
Sean,
of
because he
is,
wants bugs.
this is just a good topic after the election, but a lot of these bigger schools do central kitchens. I know that like Springfield City serves all of their food from Springfield High School and takes it out to the different buildings. We do not have the capacity to do that, and we could save a lot of money by having a central kitchen probably at the high school and then bringing the food down here or finding some way to do that. And so that is just one of our hangups, and I think that was also, might be one of the things. with
Facilities is an
ABI
issue.
is
It's gonna
it's
make it
smarter
more
than
expensive
bid.
here because of facilities and the equipment we have. And it's expensive stuff. Eventually it will be replaced, but you're not gonna replace it all right away. And that's something that companies have to work around. It makes what they do more expensive.
ABI did a tour of our high school kitchen, and they came back and I asked them what they thought. And they gave me kind of a weird look, like,
Yeah, that is part of the problem is our
We're not a
facilities.
cooking place, we're a reheating place.
Well, that's why I thought of like Antioch College,
Yeah.
other places that do have the facility,
That's why we're
that
gonna
are
be creative.
producing the food. Miguel,
Leave the poor man alone.
When
It's a
I,
lot of tacos.
when I worked in corrections, we had a thing with Bob Evans, where Bob Evans was providing food. I mean, they were coming in and they were also teaching people how to prepare it. So you had a cooperation of students getting their food handling licensing and preparation, and they prepared food at the facilities, you know. So there are a lot of possibilities out there.
All right, thanks. Okay, so,
Passing out my 5-year
Yep.
forecast that I realized is not, I didn't scan it in because I was printing it at 6:55.
do enough people to see what they're.
I have,
Do you want your paper?
I'm happy to
you
share.
can share too.
I'll share.
I made like 12 copies, we should have enough.
Could you make it a smaller point?
It's like that every time.
So I'm getting
This is
older.
ODE right here,
Make
it's
sure-
not me.
Make sure
It's
Carol
not
and
my
Eli get a copy.
spreadsheet.
somebody like a copy?
Anybody want?
I don't know.
Carol and Eli need one, I think, for sure.
You're missing out, it's like eye strain font and everything.
See?
Okay, so, What I'm going to focus on is, this is the spreadsheet that I will turn into ODE. I didn't print out all of my assumptions because I think that's just a waste of paper. You see them, I don't usually, May is just an update. It's an update from where we were at in October to where we are at now. I
Do you
don't
want us
usually,
on this page?
I
No,
didn't,
that's-
I didn't get to
no.
scan it in.
Oh, sorry, okay,
I
sorry.
was in 3 minutes.
Because I was looking for that and I can't
Sorry,
find it.
yeah.
All right.
So sorry. If you look at the second page where I have the comparison to where we were at in October to where we are at now, the biggest changes that we have are in revenue, like our income tax going up 16% from last year. I would have never, ever projected a 2-digit increase in income taxes. But for our property taxes, I was anticipating that we would go back down to the 20 mil floor. And if you remember, when we got our tax rates, we are not at the 20 mil floor, we're at 20.000013 or something like that. So those were factored back down, but we still did receive a better increase than what I had projected. I thought it would be around 3%, and we got about a 4.12% increase over last year. So property taxes were up some. I don't know what is going on with personal property taxes. It's been $90-some thousand for years and years and years, and then now it's 125. So I don't have any idea, but we don't get any type of detailed breakdown of why it is like that. And if there's anything, they've been phasing out utilities and telephone for a long time. So I don't know why that would increase ever. I just talked about our income tax. Our investment income this year has been wonderful. The interest rates have gone up. We had several CDs that I've only been able to put out for maybe a year and a half, 2 years, 1 year, but the rates just keep getting better and better, and so a lot of those were cashed out this year and then reinvested. We've got one that's coming due on May 15th. I've already talked to my investment advisor about turning that around by the end of the month, so we can start reinvesting that. But the interest rates have just been a lot better, so our investment earnings have been double, which is really exciting. Our open enrollment numbers, when I did the 5-year forecast in October, I don't know those numbers yet. We are down, I don't know, at least 17 kids from last year. So what I did is I had built in a 1% increase, but then actually our numbers went down. But our numbers are still a lot higher than what they have been in the past few years. So it's not that it's some devastating loss. It's just last year we had an incredibly large open enrollment year.
And that decrease is actually intentional, so it's not
Right.
something we didn't intentionally try to do. We did that intentionally. So.
Okay, other local, that's where I have to deposit my special education billings, and I reported on that prior that we received $196,000 this year, which is the highest that we've ever received for those billings. So those are coming from other school districts paying for the specialized education for those kids. Our state foundation looks to be on target. Our homestead and rollback looks to be on target. Casino tax revenues, they went up a little bit. I'm excited. And then everything else is really pretty much staying the same right now. So our revenue is $268,000 higher right now than what I thought we were going to be, which is great. That's about 2.94% over what my original projection was. Our expenses, I just went through and made a few adjustments here and there for some, I don't like adjusting expenditures because I think you have to stay within a budget. So I don't typically mess with our purchase services, the materials and supplies and techs and equipment unless I know there's been some sort of change. We have had some changes in salaries and benefits with our staffing shifts, so I did put some money in there for how we're going to have to shift things around to get through the end of the year. And then our purchase services, those are currently running under budget. And then most everything right now is running under budget, but my principals usually like to spend their money by the end of the year, so I'm sure Matt Couch has already spent about $30,000 within the last 5 minutes.
Last check bounces, baby.
Our expenditures look to be on target for the year, so I didn't make a big adjustment to those, but I will, at the end of the year, report out where we came out on expenditures as well. The net effect would be that right now we're looking at, with all of these increased revenues being about $258,000 higher than where we were in October, which is always the direction I like to go. I am not a conservative revenue estimator. I try to be as accurate as possible, and these are things that you just don't foresee. So I was pretty excited about that. So for going the 5-year forecast on out, I just threw in a couple of revised graphs with the new cash balances and deficit spending, revenue over expenditures that we have over the next 4 years. Everything, when you have an improvement like that in 1 year, it always kind of goes out and keeping that improvement. But I also today know that maybe some increased expenditures we're going to have next year, so I put those in there. And then with the revenues, it's one of those things where, you know, I'll increase the revenue for what we've gotten this year, but we could get a 10% decrease in income tax next year. We just don't know. So, and that's not one of those things that I'll know more information by October. We're going to receive, we've already had tax bills go out for the year, and so that's not going to change for the calendar year. It may change probably next January, when we will probably factor back down to that 20-mil floor. So we'll just have to see how that goes. But this is kind of where I'm at right now. Not huge, significant changes, other than putting that increased revenue in and then just seeing where we're at as time goes on. But it just, the way things are going has been in our favor, that we really stayed within budget on our expenses, and our revenues have had some unexpected increases, which are wonderful, and we just keep really extending out the use of the money, the new money that we put in. So I'm going to, our next project is to start working on what we're going to do with some of this cash balance and setting it aside for certain purchases and earmarking it, and then once we work on that, which if we have a calm summer, it would be really nice to get that done before the October forecast, and that way when I submit that to the county auditor, it's going to come with a large explanation that some of these monies are tied up and being saved for certain particular things. So that is my plan right now.
Very good.
You can, okay, go ahead. Go first.
Quick question, so Fresco Laboratory, is that, when does that begin to hit our bottom line, hit our revenue stream, and is that something that's built into this particular 5-year forecast?
Well, the problem is without, it's kind of hard to explain. First of all, the people that work there do not pay taxes to the schools unless they live here, which I'm saying that for camera purposes too. The village gets the taxes from all the people that work here. We only get the taxes from the people that reside here. So our hope would be we would hire some people locally. That personal property phase out many years ago was to encourage businesses to come to Ohio because their tax burden was reduced by not having to pay the taxes on the property inventory within their company. So the only increase to us would be the value of the building that is being built, being put on our property tax levy.
But even
Or
that is not
property
an
tax
increase, right, to our actual budget. It increases it spreads out the taxes for the community. We're still collecting this thing about commercial
So
side.
that's new construction, and new construction you can start receiving new taxes on. And they have said that they are not applying, no, I haven't heard an update on that, but they were not going to apply for abatement on their property. So it should be at the full value of the property once it's constructed. But that's, I mean, it's not, that's just not
So I
going to be a
guess
large amount of money.
it's not in here, is what you're saying.
It is not in there because I don't know what the value of their building is going to be.
So going forward, either the next revision or the revision after that, we'll have more data that will then support putting it in here.
Right.
And then the athletic fund, is that the typical trend? I can't remember a year ago, was it 15, 20, 25?
It's,
9?
no, because we had a couple of good years with soccer and basketball, and then you increase revenues. We also had some years where we were actually getting some of the concession stand money, and we have allowed that to go back to the classes, the sophomore, junior, senior classes, and so was probably a couple $1,000s that we're not getting anymore. A couple $1,000s on that small of a budget is a lot of money. So we've just had some good tournament years. Other than that, that's really about all that I can see. It also depends on how many we host. how many of our events that we are hosting, because if they are at away places, then those are the ones getting more money. And I know, that goes back and forth every year, where sometimes you have a lot more home events and sometimes you don't. So it's hard to make a trend. I mean, I would say we are consistently losing more and more money. I have transferred maybe, I don't have that with me, I should have brought it with me, but, like I did like 4,000, 6,000, 8,000, and now this year was just one of those really off years. We just didn't take in a lot of money. And I have, what I'll provide for you at the end of the year is I have a history that's got all of our line items for the past 10 years that shows what we've taken in admissions, what it looked like when we had football, what our expenses are looking like over the years. And that will show you a little bit more, but there's nothing glaring in there that says, this is what the problem is.
Well, and I think a few years ago when they came in, we wanted to lower the rates to enter games and had it so that students were free, I think, for a year, and then that's shifted, right? I think we're charging kids now, is that right? It's not,
It's still
but it's
cheaper.
significantly less than what they used to charge several years ago, so clearly the revenue coming in is less than it ever was. And, when your teams are doing really well, kids come out, the community comes out to watch them. We haven't had a great run in this basketball the past several years. So I think that creates a problem. 3 or 4 years ago, we had a really great team, we went really far. I think that year was pretty good, I think. But other than that, the expenses are going to continue to rise because refs are going to get paid more. And just read some interesting articles about youth sports and how they're having a harder and harder time finding refs and umpires to do the work because of the crowd and the parents and the reactions, and it's been so negative and even coaches and spirited. So.
No, that's good. I guess I just want to reiterate what you said at the very end. I really do hope we can find some time early in the summer to talk about cash balance and some forward planning. I think we all have some thoughs about this, and so I think that we can find the time to.
Well, I just kind of feel like that's a goal we gotta make.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Because of the possible ramifications if we don't.
Right.
We need to have it specified.
Right. And obviously, we can't do it in this session, in this format, so we'll have to find a work session of some kind to do that.
Okay, anything else? No? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we have to go ahead and adopt 5-year forecast, right? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All right, roll call.
Sylvia?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Aida?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. First, superintendent updates.
Okay, so we had a levy on Tuesday, in case you didn't know. And it's been a long 15-month journey for us and a very long process that, we ultimately ended up on the losing side of. But we're taking this day by day and slowly, getting stronger every day and slowly, reflecting and bouncing back day by day. I think with a lot of the challenging, contentious issues that were wrapped around this particular initiative, it's going to take some time for everybody to really recover and it won't happen overnight. I have a statement that I submitted to the news and that I also submitted to several newspapers that I kind of wanted to read for voters tonight, and I had a few extra things that I threw in there that just reflected on a little bit more the past few days, and so I'm just going to read it because I want to make sure I say it right for folks to hear. I want to thank the Yellow Springs community for coming out and voting on this important levy. We're grateful for all of the volunteers who gave countless hours to help organize the campaign effort. Their hard work making phone calls, going door to door, distributing yard signs, hosting discussions in their homes, and writing letters in the media was critical to getting information out to voters. I also want to thank the leaders of the campaign, TJ Turner, Matt Grishon, and Jolanda Lazar for their hard work and dedication throughout a long campaign process. And to that end, they endured quite a bit of personal attacks from folks, and they did it courageously and without engaging in returning those personal attacks. Despite our best efforts, the school levy failed to garner enough support from our community. This is a disappointing loss for our students and our educators. Going forward, we now have two big challenges our community will have to face, and I think it's important to point these out. And these are two new challenges that didn't necessarily exist before Tuesday. The first is that building costs and interest rates on any future levies will be significantly higher. Our interest rate was quoted at 4.5% for May 2018. An underwriter for education bonds recently shared with me that the question facing school bond levies in the future is not, will interest rates rise, but how much and how many times in 2018. Predictions are that we're talking about 2 to 4 times that the interest rates are going to rise between now and the end of 2018, and then 2019 as well. What's happening in Yellow Springs, where housing prices are really skyrocketing, is not unique to Yellow Springs. It's happening in communities across the country. And so the feds are going to have to raise interest rates to prevent a housing bubble in the future and things of that nature. And so it's a definite that that's happening. The Fed has already said this. The question is how many times they're going to do this in 2018 and 19. So any future project is going to get more expensive for our community. So I mean, theoretically, if we have a lower levy rate, obviously it's not going to theoretically be a higher price, but you're going to get less for your money than you did a week ago, going forward for sure. The second challenge our community will now face is how to attract young families looking for a place to raise their children. A large part of the Yellow Springs allure to young families has been its reputation as an education village and its stellar record of support for its schools. With this levy failing, the real concern is that many young families will choose a different community to find a home. That could have a profound impact on the long-term viability of our community. Our schools worked very hard over the last 15 months to present a plan that was responsive to the community's feedback, met the needs of today's learners, and was a wise use of taxpayer dollars. Today, we do not have a solution to the need for renovation and additions that still exists and will only get worse and more pronounced the longer we wait. Despite the problems our buildings have, the community decidedly voted against the levy, and I think that's an important, fair point to make. The community definitely decidedly voted against the levy. The clear message of affordability, exacerbated by large village government utility hikes, and a $5 million fire station approved by the community last spring, 2 months after our first of 6 public facilities community forums, was ultimately the most resonant message in the past 6 months. Our staff and board will need to take some time over the next few weeks to reflect on the important message our community sent us and consider our best options moving forward. I want to thank the community again for voting and taking the time to engage in this important issue. I'm really proud, even if it didn't go our way, the fact that over 50% of our community came out for a May election and cast their ballots. Democracy is a wonderful thing, even when it doesn't go quite your way, the way you'd like it to go, you know. And so thanks to the Yellow Springs community for coming out and voting and sending us a pretty clear message. But I want to stress that the problems are not going away. And in fact, we've added a few more. And so my hope is that the folks who were adamantly against this, who came out and organized and were really instrumental in delivering a really ultimately an effective message to the community, will be just as vigilant in coming up with a plan for the entire community, and one that is well thought out, that is specific, and that has the kinds of details necessary to be properly vetted by our community before going forward. I think at a minimum, that's what we should expect from our community. So in terms of the levy, I'm gonna put that statement in the Yellow Springs News as a letter to the editor. The board's okay with that, because I do want to make sure the entire statement gets in there, as opposed to what sometimes happens, which is just pieces of statements that are said. And if it gets in the YS News and I put it in there, it will get in as I intend.
You should do well, I think, to put it on the district website as well, because you're quite right. We want to make sure that it is represented in full in a place that people have access to it.
Right, I appreciate that. Yeah. So the other thing I want to say is I want to take a second to add to this. I didn't comment earlier, but today this is Teacher Appreciation Week, and I really want to say that I appreciate our teachers. I want to thank the folks who spoke today for the feedback. I think that was really helpful to know, and we're going to be reflective of what we've heard. But I want to speak to what I saw today. I mean, just Jack was talking about a Power of the Pin team that went against all the best middle schools in the entire region, and we won. That's an example of rigor in our middle school and high school. That's an example of rigor in K-12. as compared to other schools in our community. We have great teachers and students in our schools as well, as exemplified by the kids who went downtown for the walkout and decided to spend their time calling their senators and advocating for what's important and being great public citizens, because that is indeed exactly what we want our kids to be learning when they graduate from our schools, is to be advocates for their own learning. And I think this is the best staff I've ever worked in. I've worked in a school that was designated as the #1 middle school in the state of Ohio, and I can tell you without a doubt we have a better staff than that school building had. And we have a great, great staff and great teachers. Wyoming Middle School in Wyoming, Ohio. And I can also tell you that I've walked the hallways of our high school, and I've walked by many classrooms with teachers in them, and I've seen kids, I very rarely see kids being rude, off the walls, misbehaving, with headphones on all the time. In fact, what I see is kids who are engaged in their learning, who are doing tremendously well, who are we're proud of the work that they do. So I just want to at least speak to that from a counter-narrative standpoint, that I understand there are different opinions, but I think it's important to share what I've seen from my experience and how proud I am of our kids and our teachers. I think there are things we can do to improve, there's no doubt about it, and so I want to reflect on the feedback we hear and really try to take a look at it. So what I heard today, I will go back and take a look at it. I will take a second crack, because I think that's really important to do, especially when the community has the courage to come and share that with us, and I appreciate that information. We will do that for sure. But I just wanted to at least share my perspective. Just a quick update on the high school investigation. Sean?
So the levy, just for a second.
Sorry.
Is there so we started a process 15 months ago, and like the process didn't stop on Tuesday or when we found out the results. Like, is there a wrap up to the process, like that the consultants that we worked with can give us some kind of final report and the things they found along the way, the concerns, and we know many of the concerns, we heard them, but some document that says like this is the end of this first attempt, and these are some recommendations. And then also the perspective from the levy committee. You know, I only know that stuff anecdotally, but could the levy committee, and I know the last thing they want to do is have to do something else, but could they almost like reflect a little bit?
So it's funny, we are planning on meeting, the levy committee is planning on meeting outside of, in the evening, I think soon, the next couple of weeks, to discuss and reflect on what happened and really learn. You know, one of the things that we try to teach our kids that's really important, and our faculty actually, is we want people to fail forward. You know, that when you make mistakes, take enough risk that you make mistakes, and then when you make mistakes, you learn from that failure and go forward. So really, really important that when you mess up, when you fail, and I would say a 65 to 35% loss is definitely a failure on our part at some level. But when that happens, that we really don't miss the opportunity to learn from this. So big opportunity for us to learn. What did we do wrong? What happened in this? What did we miss along the way? And certainly I think there were a lot of things that happened that were out of our control. But I also think there are things we could have done differently within our control. And so I want to know what those things are and what we could have done to improve the message, because I think the message was a good message. I think it was a sincere message. And I think we really felt like we provided the best plan we could for our community that was the most cost effective. Obviously, there's some disagreement on that. And I recognize the errors we've had in communicating that effectively to our community. But we just want to know what we did. And so to that end, Steve, Aida, and I are going to meet with the core team that's met all year, probably next maybe a week from Tuesday. We'll see where we are. We're going to try to find a date that works for everybody. And get together and talk and get an idea of what we can do going forward, ideas for moving forward. So there's a few questions out there. We are too late for the August ballot. Do we put a new levy on the November ballot right away? Do we wait till March or May of next year? Do we wait till November of 2019? Or do we not set any timeline at all and just sort of see what happens and see what the community decides we want to do ultimately? I think the problem with November is that we really only have till July 9th to come up with a plan for the board to vote on as a first vote in order to get it on the ballot in November. And I think given what we've heard from our community, we probably need some time to really figure that out. I'm not going to make a judgment that that's not an option for us at this point, because it's way too early to really do that. But I do think it's something that the board needs to keep in mind over the next few days and weeks. Steve?
Just have a suggestion. the community has clearly spoken, and what I tend to be hearing a lot is that this is one of the first letters the community felt like they weren't really, they didn't have much input into it, and are basically hurt by it, almost like a lack of, they felt like they told you what they could and that something else was still done.
Told me what they could, or us what they could.
Yeah, well, us, and so I definitely want to also turn to the board, and I think putting a lot of work, the homework could have been done by a lot more of us as well. And I just think that people just felt like more than a phone call or an internet survey might have made this go in a much more dependable of what the numbers should have looked like versus coming up with the absolute opposite. If the community is not heard, I mean, like clearly they will speak in their own way, and they did, and very loud and clear. I mean, to a point where just when we do start going into meetings about this, I think we need to immediately start asking the community now and start looking for best of, because there were some things that were just that were addressed, or people voting no for completely wrong reasons, but there were a lot of really good points made that need to be addressed immediately when we start talking about this next plan, because once again, something has to be done. But I do want to put the sentiment out there that people felt very not listened to, and no, a lot of them didn't say it felt purposely like that, but that when it came down time to a vote, that they weren't able, that whatever the options were, they never felt like any of them came from the community, that they only came from an outside, top-down source. And so I think we need to look at that and maybe think of a way to go grassroots up about how to do this. Because I think the community didn't vote no as much as voted saying that they want a community-based project that we're all working on and not a top-down. And that's my sense, this is a levy part. I just wanted to absolutely say that I think that that's how we need to work this. That's where I'd like to start.
I just don't want to leave it though sounding like there was only a survey or a phone call, because there were multiple community meetings where input was taken and people were listened to. And I do think there's sometimes a confusion between people getting their way versus being listened to. And that we have to be careful about too. People were definitely listened to. That's why the plan changed.
People don't feel they were listened to.
We can't.
That's people's feelings. I'm stating the fact about the opportunities that were there.
Yeah, I guess I would add to that the sort of irony that.
And that's part of the problem, is feelings versus reality.
Wow.
When the utility bills were raised, that was not a public process. The township didn't really engage in a public process about the fire station. We thought we had made a very good faith effort to have any number of public events where people could come and talk through ideas, and you're quite right that.
And the reality is those opportunities were offered multiple times.
About a half a dozen times.
Could those continue, just shouting out from the audience? Right now,
I think Mari's point is, I guess I'm going to agree with you just personally. I think we all have to, as Steve was just saying, kind of huddle up and figure out. As I said, all I mean to say is that we listened pretty hard to people who turned out to speak to us, and the plans we considered, I think all told, close to 18 different options, and winnowed down what was on the ballot based almost entirely on the kind of feedback we got from those varieties of meetings, plus a public survey, plus lots of other input. Now, it didn't fly, but I'm not sure what else we could have. I mean, we had public engagement sessions at a rate of almost once a month, and I just don't know what more we could have done with that. And I will also just say that many of the loudest shrillest voices never attended any of those public sessions. I'm not sure how you address that either. I'm keen to figure out how, but you can't talk with people who aren't in a room to talk with you.
And hardly anybody took us up on the opportunities to tour the schools and really look in both buildings.
Yeah, so I wanted to get back to the, Mike, I was going to say one more thing about going forward. So I got read an article from a guy named Paul Fallon, who's a big, he does a lot of polling and all that kind of stuff, and he does communication research for levies across the state. He's kind of a big guy in Southwest Ohio. He sent me an email the other day and said, you know, Mario, sorry about the levy, and gave me a really long, really thoughtful list of things to consider going forward. And I thought it was really powerful. And a couple ideas, so he gave me a list of 5 ideas that we should try to do going forward. And I think I'm going to share them with the board as soon as I get a chance here. And I think they're really good. And one of those things is maybe related to where Steve's going, which is this idea of focus groups. You know, he talked about getting focus groups with people you don't even have a connection to, especially when you don't talk to on a regular basis, from the community who are definite no voters, and getting them together in a room with us and really hearing why they voted no, or not why they voted no, why they think other people voted no. And I think that way it depersonalizes it and allows them to be more honest about what their rationale was or reasons for voting no. And can really give us some good feedback, I think, because I think, and then the other piece was really trying to understand the no voter and what happened. Because 65% of voters voted no. And trying to understand where that 65% of our community was coming from and why they felt that way is super important. I said earlier that I thought affordability was the big issue, and when you, especially when you combine the 2 recent things, but that's maybe too simplistic. It could be much more than that. That's what I'm thinking right now. But when I actually talk to people, and we actually meet with people, it may be something very, very different. It may be just a simple thing as saying, you brought in a canned program of how you do school levy, you know, preparation, and you put these 12 plans out there before, you know, ahead of time, and then ask the community for feedback. And maybe they'll say, instead you should have just not had any plans. You should have asked the community what they wanted to begin before that. Maybe that's what will come out. And maybe that little thing would have made a huge difference for folks in Yellow Springs. I don't know, but I think it's worth asking.
So to go back to my original question about the wrap up, I think like those are questions that the commit, not so much the levy committee, but the consulting firm that maybe misread our community. I want them to think hard about that and learn, because this is a learning moment. I completely agree. This is a learning moment for us. We have to move beyond. We have to address the school issues. We got to figure out how to get to yes, not to, and do it in the way that works for our community. So I really want them to think about that, because I would like them to reflect on it, and maybe, and I would hope they would have some thoughts. Like, this is where we thought we could have, maybe we could have done something different here. Or maybe they would say, no, I do this exactly the same way again. You know what, you're going to get the same results. But, so as part of the wrap up, really, that's you know, I'd love for them to think long and hard about it. And 14 as well.
Yeah, I have to say that I've had, in the past 4 or 5 days, I've gotten a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, people stopping me in the streets, giving me hugs, you know, and really saying to me things like, Mario, it wasn't about you. It wasn't even about the school board. It was about affordability. That this was the wrong time, everything else that happened, and people are feeling like they can't afford to live here anymore. Like legitimately, that's a real feeling and a real problem that people have in our town. And I think it resonated with our whole community in a powerful way. And so I think that's true, and it's important to think about.
Well, and along with the feelings piece, what you're talking about, I think, is recognizing that context is also extremely important.
Yeah, and it's a May levy too, but May levies are very tough oftentimes for new school levies to pass because of the time as well, so that's another factor. Although I don't know that if we did it in November, it probably still would have been a loss, truthfully, given the context of where we were, but it probably would have been a little bit closer.
I will only just reiterate what you said on Wednesday, May 9th, the schools didn't get any better. The facility problems remain. and they will only get worse and more expensive. And so, Abby, I really appreciate your being here tonight as evidence that you want to pick up the ball and help us, get to a solution to this problem. Because on May 10th they didn't get any better either, and tomorrow they're not going to be any better as well. So I agree. We have to learn from this. We have to figure out what to do because the problem hasn't gone away.
Great. Okay, I thought that was a really good conversation. It hurts. And I say that, it hurts actually to fail and to lose, and it hurts to really be in this position where I feel like the levy didn't pass for our kids. This is for our kids, and it didn't pass, and that hurts a lot. And so I would just ask folks to have a little bit of patience for us, those of us on this side of the table right now, so that we can have some time to really, really heal and reflect, because we want to get the message you sent us. And in order to do that, we need time to heal and reflect and really think through it, and we will certainly bounce back. That's what we do. And when we bounce back, I think we'll all be stronger for it in the end. And I think our community, hopefully our community will be stronger in the end as a result. And we'll put together something that has significant support and is not a waste of taxpayer dollars. Very important consideration. So, well, yeah. So the next issue is the high school investigation update. I just want to give just a quick update to that to folks who are watching on TV. I think the board already knows, and I sent home a letter to parents. But just FYI, we're still investigating the student issue in terms of sexual assault that was reported to the police. And when we became aware in early March, we started that investigation immediately. And are still ongoing with it now. It's been a challenge, I think, to meet with students and be able to really, adults, and get that done in a timely fashion. We apologize, it has taken a while, but we just ask for patience, because I think this kind of thing takes time, especially if we want to do it right. And so, along with that, obviously, we know that Dr. Cryer is out on leave. He is on. We did get another sick note from his doctor that the board approved last month, and was obviously in the newspaper, I think, today. And he will be out he'll be on leave for the remainder of the school year. And so Mr. Hatter will continue as the interim principal all the way through graduation in the summer. And we'll see what happens going forward for next school year. And as such, John Gudgel will also be there. I want to give Mr. Hatter and Mr. Gudgel significant kudos for the work they've done. Contrary to what I think is on Facebook, the high school is running just fine and doing tremendously well and thriving. I think under the leadership of Mr. Hatter and Mr. Gudgel, our kids are doing great and doing well, and our teachers are doing terrific. I've been there a lot to see what's going on, and I got to tell you, our kids are rocking and rolling. I've had senior meetings the past few months where I've sat down with every single senior in the high school and had conversations about lots of things, whatever they want to talk about. We've had exit interviews where we've talked about what's been great about our schools and what's not been so great. And we even talked about the issue of sexual assault and reporting, and had some conversation around that. And it was really a powerful discussion with kids about that issue. And I have to tell you, we are, reflecting. We're thinking deeply about what we can do differently to ensure that our kids are reporting things in a timely fashion, and to help them to be able to do that and feel comfortable doing that. And then what can we do culturally to grow even more? I do want to say that what the high school is doing, because I don't think they get credit for what they are doing. We do have a 4 through 12 sexual education curriculum that is largely based on the Planned Parenthood curriculum, and Planned Parenthood actually does come in the younger grades, but we actually have a former Planned Parenthood educator as our middle school counselor, who is working with our middle school health teacher to administer the sexual education classes at the high school and middle school. I think it's really important you report that, Carol, because the Facebook pages and the news have not reported that. And I think it's super important. So please, 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 please be a reporter that reports that information, because the opposite has been reported before now. And I think it's important, and it's incumbent on the YS News to report both sides of an issue. And so if you don't mind doing that, we greatly appreciate it, because that's the facts of what's actually happening within our school building. In addition to that, we had boys and girls nights out for a very long time that went on in the evening, but they weren't getting enough kids there. And part of Boys and Girls Night Out is a consent, is teaching kids about consent, and it's also part of the 4th through 12th sexual education curriculum. So the kids are getting it from 4th grade all the way through 12th grade, yet we continue to hear that that's not happening. And the truth is, it is happening in our schools. And I haven't heard that from the news. Again, I've heard it from other sources, like on social media as an example. So, so it is happening 4 to 12, and we moved Boys and Girls Night Out during the school day as the day of empowerment, with the full intent, and this is something that's important to write, with the full intention of making sure that every single student attends, because we think it's important. And I think that's a really important thing to make sure gets in the newspaper and out for the community, that the schools did that intentionally so that all kids could attend. And then thus the Day of Empowerment has a lot of sexual education built into it as well, including consent and work with kids, and really a lot of help, the curriculum that we're giving to our kids during that time. So beyond that, there's other things we're doing within the school, and a lot of the information that we garnered when we did garner it around this issue was due to the work our teachers have done in the classrooms. And we know that for a fact from our research. We're not going to go into any more details, but we know that that had an impact on what we know now. And so I'm very thankful to our teachers and our schools for doing the work they've done. I think there's more we can do, but to suggest that we're not doing well at it now, we're not doing better than a good majority of schools across the country, I think is not accurate. I think we do really well with that in Yellow Springs, and it's probably because of the fact that we do well with it that these things came out, ultimately. So I want to kind of just share that. Yes, sir.
Were you going to move ahead?
Yeah, well, I was going to move ahead, yes.
Okay, I just want to follow up briefly on this. You mentioned in your last item that members of the levy committee have experienced all sorts of nasty personal attacks, especially out there in the toxic stew of social media. You also have experienced all kinds of personal attacks, as have members of your staff. And I'm deeply troubled by the extraordinary rush to judgment that at least a few people in town seem to have arrived at on the basis of, as far as I can tell, virtually no actual information. It's a kind of digital vigilantism that you all have had to put up with. We've had to endure a little bit of it ourselves, so it goes. But this is really troubling that an environment like that could be created when, in fact, investigations are ongoing, investigations which we cannot rush, which have to unfold in their own time, handled by the police and handled by outside investigators. And yet somehow some number of people have decided already what happened, who was guilty, and what ought to be done about it. Just extraordinary. Thank you for keeping your cool. Jack, thank you for keeping your cool in the midst of these handful of voices which are irresponsible on their best day.
So I also want to say that, and this is not a plug because I've been involved in this, but Joan Chappelle, John Gudel, myself, and Don Wallace started these in student empowerment nights about 10 years ago. These nights were developed because we wanted to educate our kids and to empower our children in a variety of ways. We felt like that was really important. That coincided with the curriculum that was already being offered at school. We didn't feel like that was enough, so we started these student empowerment days. These have been very, very powerful evenings with our students. We've had guest speakers come in. We have martial artists come in who help empower, in particular our young women, our females. They give them voice that they didn't know they had. They give them sort of an embodiment of what's possible. this has evolved over time and it's only gotten better. And when Mario said, well, attendance was low, attendance did drop off for the guys. And that's why Dr. Cryer decided it was really, really necessary to make ways for the young men to be part of this. So again, I want to just say that, you know, this has been an agenda for many of us, both community members, myself as a board member, to really, really educate and empower our kids in a variety of ways, because that's what we believe here in our community. You don't just sit in a classroom, you have other opportunities to get educated. Sylvia and I jumped at the chance recently when Antioch College invited us, didn't even give us 24 hours notice, to come and talk to them about their sexual assault policy.
A great group of graduating seniors.
Yeah. And you know, they wanted to talk to us about opportunities and possibilities. You know, it was clear, you know, I said we don't do anything around curriculum. We came because we care. We wanted to be here. Thank you for including us. Thank you for inviting us. We gave them Shannon and Kate's names. They couldn't believe that we were talking about Shannon Morano, who they had all worked with and all adored. And so that sort of has emerged as a working relationship. I guess I want to reiterate too that people are jumping to many, many conclusions. I think our kids, speaking of our kids and their eloquence and their steadiness, our kids have responded in just incredibly beautiful, empathic, and eloquent ways to the accusations that have been going on about their friends, about their peers, and people and families that they care deeply about because they've been growing up with them for a very, very long time. So, you know, I just want to support and reiterate too that, you know, this takes time. We want to be careful. We want to be cautious. The law is taking care of this. We have little that we can do but wait. We are waiting patiently. We hope to wait tolerantly, and we hope that the community will understand that and bear with us rather than jumping to all these assumptions, making all these conclusions about what we don't yet know and fully understand. I just think we've been really, really rotten role models for our children, and that also hurts to me. That some of our kids have been much more responsive and much more caring than some of the adults online have been. So anyway.
Let me add one more thing that I was going to say earlier that I think is important to share, because our community doesn't know this, but our teachers have shared it with me, and I think it's part of my job is to share with the community what our teachers are telling me, because I think they need to know, and because our community wants to support our teachers. And I think it's important for them to know what teachers have told me. They've told Eli this, they've told a lot of folks this, that we have a communications person who actually posts different activities or things that teachers are doing in their classroom, which are really great lessons or projects that kids are doing. And she's asked teachers to give them the lessons or some of the work that they're doing so then she can celebrate them and post them on the website. And our teachers, many of our teachers have said to me, Mario, I'm afraid to give you that information or give them that information. And the reason I don't want to give them that information is because I don't want to get ridiculed online like so many other members of our school district have. That's what our teachers are saying. And that's how they're feeling. So not only are the kids watching this, the teachers are watching it, and they're not feeling supported by our community online. And so I think it's really important, and it's vehement, that I would hope the Yellow Springs News would write a story about Facebook and what's happening, and the kind of behavior that's been happening for months and months and months, and it hasn't been reported. And would at least write an article to talk about what's going on and the effect it's having on our teachers and our staff, and the support our staff and our teachers feel from our community as a result of the negative and vitriolic behavior on Facebook. I support our teachers. We tell our teachers we think they're great and they're wonderful, but at the end of the day, if when they go home and they look on some of these toxic social media sites and see our community immediately charging people with crimes they didn't even commit before they've even been charged with anything at all, I think I can understand their resistance to want to put what they're doing out for the community to see. So that's all I want to say about that, I think. The next topic, exhibition night. So we had exhibition night, it was wonderful at the elementary school. Lots of folks came out, it was really great. The projects were wonderful. One of the things I heard from somebody who was there was that the kids were out front more than ever before. They were much more vocal, more, emboldened, if you will, or really strong, and they had agency and were able to really get confidence with the way they spoke to people and to drag them into their classrooms to get them to look at their work and share their work with them, and it was really powerful. And I'm excited about next week at the high school as well, and so I really want to, it would be meaningful and mean a lot to our faculty at the high school and our kids if the community came out and supported our kids next week and showed up in droves and really asked the kids about their work and what they're doing, and really saw what's happening there in the schools. I think that's really a powerful thing. So please come out to celebrate exhibition nights. I'm sorry this was a little bit of a challenging superintendent update, but I do think there are some things that we need to talk about as a community. And I think one of the things we've heard is that folks want us to talk more real about things that are happening. I think today was a good day to talk more real about what's happening. So,
In person?
Yeah, in person, that's right, yeah.
And not anonymously?
Exactly, that's right, yeah.
Kelly Day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Anybody have anything else? Okay, we are moving on to the administrative portion of the consent calendar, 4.2 through 4.6. Is there a motion?
So moved. Oh,
Okay,
second.
somebody, all right.
Still have my role tonight.
Anything you want to say about any of these?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, so we're on
4.2.
4 point, yeah, I'm sorry. So summer school is the same as usual. There isn't a little bit of an issue in terms of funding for Title I this year at the elementary. As our federal funds continue to get cut, that's a little bit of a challenge for us. So we're going to work with Matt and find out exactly the numbers and see what that looks like and try to go forward with the program if we can. But there is no funding that's supporting it this year where it has been the case in years past. And actually, to be fair, that's been a decrease for a long time, starting in the Obama years and continuing in the Trump years. So that's all I have around that.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? Okay, I could keep writing about our kids, and it's not a reaction to what's been said earlier, but I do want to say again that I felt like the kids during that student handbook review process were exceptional. Extremely thoughtful and again sensitive and really determined, dedicated to make that handbook work for the students, not just them, but beyond them. So anyway, okay, roll call.
Steve Dunn,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Aida,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Sylvia.
Yes.
All right. Moving into the personnel portion of the consent calendar, 4.7 through 4.8. Yikes.
A lot going on here. Would you like me to talk about it?
Yeah.
So Elizabeth Simon and Shannon Wilson are moving on. Unfortunately, it's a big, big loss to our community. Actually, I should probably go down the agenda here. It's Elizabeth's, well, I don't want to talk about what she's doing. She can share that with the community if she likes. But she has a great opportunity in front of her to do something different that is very much related to her passion with schools and with project-based learning. And she has a great opportunity in front of her. Shannon and her family are moving on to the next adventures in their life, and they're excited about it. And we are going to deeply miss both of them, who are incredible teachers. That's a really tough loss for us, and we're going to do our best to replace them. But they're very tough teachers to replace. It's going to be.
You can vote now.
I mean, it is. As I'm saying this, I'm really struggling.
Sorry.
And then obviously we're hiring Alicia. We're excited about her coming and working with us. And so a couple things that have happened as a result of domino effects. So first of all, these are some of the contracts that have been recommended for teachers. I want to say that the length of the contract is largely determined by the teaching contract we have, the YCA agreement, which specifies years and what we give them based on teacher evaluation results and numerical values of those evaluations. And so that's where all of these folks are placed based on that, based on the teacher contracts. I just wanted to make that clear for everyone. as we look through that document. What else? So Kara and Stephanie, this is just sort of what happens at the end of each year. They have to move on to the next step on the calendar. They don't, I suppose it's a good thing that they're moving on to the next step in the calendar. And so, isn't it great Stephanie's here? She just came on her own to hang out. I really appreciate her being here.
Now come for a different meeting.
Yeah, it's a different meeting.
Yeah, and so, so I want to kind of take you to this page that's on the board here, and it gets a little complicated right about there. So you look at Lori Sparrow Knapp, we are raising her from 0.33 to 0.5, and so real challenge here because Lori is, the need for her class has grown tremendously. It's super valuable. She's obviously a talented educator that does exceptionally well with kids. We need an extra section, that's the bottom line, and to do that, but at the same time, we have to maintain the orchestra and the band sections that we have now, and so that's sort of where we ended up, and we had a lot of discussions about this. I did talk to Brian Mayer and Lori a lot, and Eli and Jack, and it's been even Matt, I think, that's part of this conversation a little bit, but we think it's important to do this, and I just want the board to know that. I know it's an increase, but we put a lot of time and thought into this, and I think this is the best thing to do for next school year. So if you have any questions about it, I can certainly answer them. And then, let me see what else I want to share. Did I skip over the?
Yeah, Ryan.
I did. Let me go back then.
4.8.
Yeah, I did skip past that. Okay, so so a couple things. Ryan Montross is going from half-time to full-time. So the way that the contract works is when an employee leaves, like when Shannon leaves, that opens up a position at Mills Lawn School. And Ryan, as a half-time employee and as a member of the bargaining unit, he has a right to bump into that position as a full-time member of the staff. So that's kind of how that happens. It opens up his half-time position. Sada Amin goes back to full-time teacher to cover that second half position, which opens up the half-time PBL Foundations position, which we've sort of posted, and now we're working through that now. I think it's important to just, so you can see the domino effect.
This is an Abbott Costello routine.
Yeah, this is how it works. Every year, this is the deal. And so the trick is to make sure you don't miss somebody. Which we've done pretty well so far on, but I want to make sure we keep doing. And that's hugely because of Susan and now Stephanie, their work. They really help a lot with that to make sure we don't miss anybody. And so the other thing that's happened is Olivia Dishman and who's done great in her first year in our school district. We're really pleased with how well she's done. And Jen Clark both have a desire to go to halftime. And so we don't have a provision in our contract for job sharing. So what we asked them to do, and sort of the conversation that Eli and I had to make sure we're on the same sort of page in terms of an understanding about it, is that they're going to go to halftime, but they had to sign a letter that said we want to go down to halftime, so that way we make sure I was hearing it right. That's what they wanted to do. And then if one of them decides to leave, then we kind of reserve the right to make that a full-time position again, because the issue becomes hiring another half-time teacher to fill that role. And I think we have a pretty good understanding from the YMCA that that's where we would go going forward. And maybe we should codify that at some point, but it's sort of where we are right now. I don't know that we need to at this point, but that's certainly the understanding right now. So that sums up where we are. So.
Is there a quiz?
Yeah, there's a quiz. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Jumping on what Eli said, and in all seriousness, what happens if you don't accept this and you vote no? I mean, it's a process. So I really
I'm interested.
Can they
Let's find out.
Can they not leave their position because we're under contract and maybe they're in the middle of their 3-year contract?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I suppose you could probably make an issue with the licensure board and raise the issue with them, and maybe they might give them some kind of letter that says don't do that again, or a letter of admonishment, or they may decide to potentially, in the worst case scenario, take their license away.
You could hold their licenses.
Theoretically.
If in that situation, it would actually.
No, you don't have to fire them because they wouldn't show up to work.
Right, they wouldn't show up. Or maybe they would because
So yeah.
I think early on in my career here on the board, when we investigated that, it was like when I called OSBA, they said, seriously, you'd want somebody to stay that doesn't want to be here, and you think they teach your students?
Yeah, and it was I have to tell you, that was a very difficult decision for Elizabeth. I mean, She really loves our schools. She's dedicated. It was very difficult for her.
The letter is beautiful, actually.
Well, we could symbolically vote just not to accept the letter. Did both of them upon farewell. Yes, I do have to say, you know this much more than I do, but apart from the work that she does in the classroom, the leadership she's taken, PBL, and then these 2 international trips that were, you know, the last one is just so spectacular. Yeah.
The value added of Elizabeth's assignment to our school district cannot be understated.
Lego League, yeah, right, honestly.
It is a,
Lego League.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's.
So Shannon, when I ran into Shannon the other day here, I said, oh, I'm so sorry, and she took her hand on my hand, and she said, oh no, if you knew what I was gonna do, you wouldn't be sorry. And so I said, okay, well, maybe not, but I am sorry.
Yeah, sorry for us. Not for you.
Yeah, exactly, it's about me.
She could do Lego League, couldn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, if a teacher does not apply for that stipend, then we would
Yes.
go outside.
Theoretically.
So we may still list that.
The truth is, there is
It's Lego League Junior, and she just, is part of two of them that really do it, but she'd be missed thoroughly if she were to, if she could do it. Somebody is,
She might be able to.
right, if that's good, that'd be
You know,
great.
she'll
So
be
we
in town
will
still.
accept this on the condition.
She will have some level of flexibility in her schedule. So I think the other thing I'll say to you is, and I haven't shared this with you yet, really, but it's an idea we're talking about. We want to do, which is to go from 6 coaches, PBL coaches, down to essentially 2, and really change the way it looks in terms of the structure. We heard that from our teachers. Our coaches, to be quite honest with you, it is exceptionally difficult work. They are doing their full-time teaching job on top of coaching, and it is a major challenge. But even beyond that, because these teachers are such great human beings and teachers, they believe that it's losing its effectiveness the way it's designed right now, and that there may be a more effective way to do the work. And so we got together and had a lot of debate about this. So we'll see what happens, but I think in June we may be recommending candidates for newly created positions around this and then getting rid of the other positions instead. So, and we'll take the dollars essentially that were divided the way they were for all 6 and put those into the 2 and go from there. And so, you know, somebody like Elizabeth theoretically could potentially do one of those positions if we chose to hire her. So that's a possibility.
All right, I think we're gonna have to vote. Yeah,
It's a
we
sad
have a vote.
day.
Yeah, I just realized, yeah. Second? Is there a second? Okay. All right, roll call.
Steve?
Which one?
Me, okay, yes.
Aida?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Sylvia?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
All right.
We want people to.
Okay, we are in our board communications, Green County Career Center report.
Commencement graduation evening is on May 22nd. It's over at the
Another set.
Nutter Center. Thank you. I kept saying Netter, but I knew that wasn't right. It's a great evening. Lots of really happy families. So that's where I'll be on the 22nd.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to be there this year too.
Oh, great.
Should have it. It's not on the exhibition. So.
Right.
All right, any, formally into board member items, any other board member items? I got a bunch, so, but anybody else? Okay.
Fire away.
Okay, so I'm just gonna announce all the promotions and graduations,
Yes,
right?
please.
Because the public is invited to attend, and there's not a dry eye in the house typically on any of these nights. So we have a 6th grade promotion on the 29th of May. We have the McKinney Middle School 8th grade promotion on the 30th, and Yellow Springs High School graduation on the 31st. And so we'd like the community to be aware of that and attend if you'd like to, and bring fans to the high school to cool leaves
Can I just point out real quickly that the 8th grade promotion
Oh, yeah.
that's typically held at 7 o'clock is actually going to start at 6:30 this year to accommodate a different type of celebration afterwards. So instead of the typical 7 o'clock start, there will be a 6:30 start for the 8th grade promotion.
So I can talk very vaguely about that. There's a parent who has offered up this large space. They have a really cool place with it's going to be a really cool opportunity for the kids to all get
everybody
together.
hope you
My
know
invitation got lost in the mail, is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
It's for the kids. It's for the
You
kids.
may feel like you're an 8th grader sometimes.
Yeah, I like where this is going.
Yeah.
Wait, he didn't hear that, Mario.
I said you may feel like you're an 8th grader sometimes, but really it's for
All right, well, I want to extend my appreciation to the board, I think for all the teachers, for the administrators who have stepped in flawlessly through this transition and through this very, very difficult time and kept the focus and kept the energy where it belongs. I think we all appreciate that immensely, and your steadiness is not being missed here, so thank you. I'd like to say thank you to the campaign committee as well, because I know that they have worked long, arduous hours, hitting the pavement, hitting the streets, as well as calling and meeting and so forth. So I want to say thank you to the entire campaign committee. I know there were a group of people who didn't miss a meeting, and then there were people who stepped in, and just appreciate everybody's hard work and energy. And we need to come up with a work session date.
So, just like that?
Right
Just
now?
like
Like right
it
now?
would be
Are
a
you
good
trying to,
idea.
Okay.
well, is your ambition, Madam President, to try to do this in May, given everything going on in May, or are we looking now at early June?
Can we try?
Can we try in
And then
May?
when it doesn't work, we.
Yeah, I think if we could
Okay.
do it in May, that would be great, but it might not be possible.
Okay.
So our next board meeting is on the 14th, which is good.
14th of June, right.
So that gives us a little bit more time too, if we can't get it to that, which I'm not sure we can get it to.
What's the evening of the
It's worth
24th
trying.
look like?
That's, what day of the week?
That's a
Thursday.
Thursday, the
It'll be 2 weeks
24th.
from.
There's a,
Right.
I'm gonna.
There's always something going on in schools.
Well,
last
yeah,
two-
it's
last 3
the,
weeks. What's going on that night?
if that works for everybody else except me, then I don't wanna be the one to mess it up, but that is the thespian induction, but I could also just like pass stuff off and not be there.
I think it works for me.
It works for me.
It works for me.
Damnation. What time would it be? What, battle?
Let's do it.
Are you going to be in Chicago, or are you going to be?
No, it's
Here,
Yellow
here,
Springs,
Yellow
the high
Springs,
school
I think, gotcha,
thespian, it's
gotcha.
our local
Okay,
thespian,
gotcha.
yes.
Yeah, I just thought
Do you know what
it was
time
Wyndham or
that
something that
is?
was.
It's an evening cookout thing, so it's, we should just do this if this works for everybody.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
What's the earliest people can get here? I mean, 6?
Right, 6, and that's still probably late if traffic is.
We should pick
Okay.
a time where you're, yeah, we should pick a time where you definitely can
Yeah,
be
you shouldn't have
comfortably,
6
so that you're not doing that.
6:30, then.
Okay.
Do 5:30, yeah. That gives me time for traffic
Right.
issues.
So 6:30 Thursday, May 24th.
Yeah,
And is there
I think that's right.
an agenda that you want to?
yeah, well, I think we're gonna talk about, follow up on the
Okay.
facilities
I'll
issue
make sure
as
that's what
well
you wanna
as
talk about,
the cash carryover
Yeah.
conversation.
Do you think that gives the levy committee, the core team, consulting firm enough time?
I think so. We're talking about trying to make all these meetings happen quickly. So
Okay.
What was the second thing, Libby?
cash balance.
Yes.
I think that's a pretty ambitious agenda.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Just do it.
I think you may just want to cover.
Would
one
some of
issue.
it be like intro to that? Because that would sound way better than actually getting way into.
Yeah, I just don't. I mean, I think 2 solid hours just talking about facilities is going to be, and then we might leave at the end of 2 hours still a little confused about, what we want to do going forward. But
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
That would be great
So,
for me.
and cash balance
Not to
question.
have to talk about, have to prepare that
Well,
because
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think
I've got
almost like
some
the most
stuff coming
we
up,
could
I'm not
do
gonna
would
be at
like-
work, my son graduates that weekend.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
good, good.
So that's
Okay,
what
well,
it is then.
Yep,
Okay.
6:30 to 6:30.
okay, on the 24th.
6:30 to
6:30 on the
8:30?
24th.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, something hopefully like that. Okay, I think anybody have anything else coming up? No? All right, I think we are ready to adjourn. All in favor?
Yes.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Always coming